Guilty.
There he is. Before we start, George and I'd like to thank Jamie Klaber and David Bryant and Helene Gallen very much for having us here and for having this wonderful event. It has been fantastic. It's been a great time here. They deserve a big round of applause.
Was that it? That's your whole speech?
That was it.
Oh, okay. Some people showed up at this. We're really glad to be here, and I was particularly glad to be invited because I've been a big fan for a long time, and the minute I got the call... See, it gets better with that way. Anyhow, the minute I got the call, I raced out and bought a copy of this book, and then I went home and I read it, and then I read it again because I just couldn't believe any one man could live through the adventures of this book. He talks about his relationship, that's a good word, with some of the world's most fantastic leading ladies. And not all of them. I did talk to the guy that wrote it with you. He said you left a few things out, which I may include. Anyway.
Well, we left a few ladies out.
Left a few ladies out.
We couldn't.
You barely left a few ladies. It's unbelievable. When you read this book and you see the women that he had, the women that he worked with, it was a mistake, but he knew a lot of, not in a biblical sense, but he knew a lot of very exciting ladies, and they're in here, and it's really wild because you hear about these women who we all knew. Some of the sexiest women were Sophia Loren and Brigitte Bardot, and one of his first jobs was doing the screen test for Marilyn Monroe, right? Oh boy. So, but anyway, looking at all of that, I'm in awe. I'm in awe that you still are with us, because the life he led, I figured he'd be taking a dirt nap before he was 28. But you lived through it, and you're looking good. I think this is the third version of, Anyway, why don't we...
I'm going to do that.
You want me?
I want you to use that.
Oh, so can you hear now? Yeah. Doesn't get any better. Okay, so why don't we start from the very beginning? How the hell did you do this? What? Tell me the early part. I mean, what were you doing? You were where? Jump in here anywhere.
How did I do this?
Yes,
well,
how did you get there? I mean, this didn't just happen. You didn't just fall up a turnip truck.
Wait a minute. How did I do this book?
No, the book part we'll get to.
Okay.
The book part, writing the book was easier than living it. You know, you remind me of the actor. They said about this actor. They said he had just finished his first book, and next year he's going to read another one.
Very good.
Well, Mr. Wagner has written 3 of these, and in my opinion, this one is probably the best.
Oh, thank you.
Because it deals with things which I'm most interested in.
That's what I was going to tell you. You know, the man that I wrote this book with, and who was a marvelous film historian.
He's in the home now.
No, he's not. He's here tonight, and I want him to stand up and take a bow.
He can't stand up. He wrote the book.
Where is he? Here he is. Scott Iman, who has written many, many books, and he and I collaborated on these 3, and the best thing that came out of all of it, really, is that we become very close friends. And this book is a tribute to all of the leading ladies that I had the privilege of working with, and who I have met throughout my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was talking to Scott about it. Actually, he brought it up, and he said, you know, you've worked with a lot of these ladies, and we started talking about it, and we put down 3 ladies that we thought would be interesting, and we presented it to our publisher through our agent, Mort Janklow, and they responded to it very positively.
Sure.
And so we wrote this one, which is I Loved Her in the Movies. Yes. And it's a tribute to all of the great leading ladies. I mean, and how much they gave, and up to us and how much we responded to them and what they meant to us. in
You,
our
you would
lives.
know more about that than we would. But it's amazing. I mean, the thing when you said in the cover in the beginning of this book, you said it's a love letter to these leading ladies, and these leading ladies have received a lot of love letters. But it was Sophia Loren and Bridget Bardot, and he did the screen test for Marilyn Monroe. Ready for that? Anyhow,
Yes.
pretty good considering what you've been through.
Thank you. It has been a fantastic ride, and I must say that I'm one of the most fortunate people in the world who have been able to be exposed to these different ladies, and they've all meant it.
You heard the word exposed, didn't you? Go ahead, John. Go ahead, Wagner. You're my idol, you know. I wanted to be you if I could pass the physical, but
You know, I've known George for a
not in a biblical sense.
long time. I first met him way back. There was a wonderful nightclub called Ciro's, and George was very much responsible for that and had some of the greatest acts in the world there. As a matter of fact, do you remember the Williams brothers? Remember was
Little
one
Andy
of the
Williams.
acts?
Thank you for
and
saying I
Josephine
worked there.
Baker. Do you remember Josephine Baker?
Oh,
You
very
remember?
well. Thank you for saying I worked there. You didn't say that I was a bouncer, which Mrs. Schlatter is very sensitive about that.
I know that. That's why
So
I
we
said
say
that.
I was an executive in charge of emergency departures. And she's much happier with that.
And he was great at it. He was great at it. And that's when I first met George, and he has done so much and brought us all so much laughter over the years. You saw some of that with those clips of Laugh In. I mean, you kind of turned the world upside down.
Oh, yeah. Well, you literally, but anyhow. No, RJ, how did all of this happen? You started out, and somebody told me you started out as a stable boy. Now, come on, is that true?
No, I didn't start out as a stable boy.
Okay.
The first
What were you doing with all those horses?
The first lady I met, who was in the beginning of the book, was Norma Shearer. Do you all remember who Norma Shearer was? And she was one of the biggest stars in the world, and she was, her husband was the head of MGM, Irving Thalberg, and I went to school with his son, and I was about 7 years old, and I was a boarder at this school, and the boarders could go with young students on the weekends and play in their homes and have dinners and all that. And his mother was Norma Shearer. And when I was taken there, I remember being taken upstairs, and she was in bed. She was doing Marie Antoinette. And I didn't know who Norma Shearer was, and I didn't know who Marie Antoinette was. But I knew that I was in the presence of something really very, very special, and that stardust, I think, kind of sprinkled over me a bit, and I never forgot it. She gave me a 11 by 14 picture, and it said to Wagner, because I was a cadet, and she said, "With my best wishes." It's in the book. I still have the picture. I was 7 years old, and I kept that picture. I had a treasure chest, and I kept that picture folded up in there, and it's in my book. And she made such a tremendous impression upon me. And then they brought the picture to the school to run, a black and white 16 millimeter. You know, this is 1937, 38. And I'm looking at the picture, and I see Norma Shearer, and I see all of these men in powdered wigs and swords and all that kind of stuff, and I say, "That's not her house." I was there. That isn't where she lives. I didn't have any idea what was going on, but I knew that there was something special about the motion picture business and something
Then
So
began a
exciting.
parade of leading ladies. Then that was followed by a parade of leading ladies.
Well, it wasn't, I got under contract to Fox. You mentioned Marilyn a couple of times.
Sure.
Everything in the world has been written about Marilyn Monroe, and we were kids together, and I was 18, 19 years old, and I was under contract to Fox, and she was there, and they needed somebody. I was the test boy. I was trying to get as much knowledge as I could out of the motion picture business. So I was, I volunteered to test with anything. I mean, I'd test with dogs and anything. And Marilyn, I tested with her for her twice, both screen tests. And she was a wonderful girl, George. Did you ever know her?
No, I
never met her?
tried, but I couldn't get in. There was a line. No, but Marilyn Monroe is just one of them. You've got in here, you've got Rosalind Russell, and you've got Greer Garson, and you've got all of these ladies who, we know them now, we think about them in later years, but at that point, here you were, barely out of your teens, right?
Yeah.
And doing wonderful things. And it worked. You survived it, and so did they. But here, RJ, look, you see this book? These are all the things in the book that I said I was going to ask you about. And Jolene said, I don't think so. But you have had such an absolutely wonderful life.
So blessed.
I mean,
So very, very.
how many leading ladies did you work with? Can you give us an estimate?
Oh, I don't know.
Was it about
You can't.
1,500?
I mean, when I was doing when I was doing the television show, Heart to Heart, I mean, there was, or Switch or any of those. Thank you very much. Different leading lady every week.
Yeah.
And we couldn't, Scott and I couldn't put in all of the ladies.
No,
So
no room.
We tried to be specific and pick the ones that were, and there's some special ladies in there.
Those some very special and some very special relationships. Scott says you put some of them in there, which I think is encouraging. But here's a young man who. Are you gonna be all right? Hello.
Yeah, I'll be all right.
All right, nurse. We have had such fun together, and some of these people we've had mutual acquaintances with some of them, and it's a parade of. You have actresses and they're gorgeous in your relationship. I had comedians and Judy Garland and people like that, and so we've shared a few memories, shared a few experiences. And,
We have. Well, I wish you hadn't mentioned the Judy Garland situation because you produced the Dinah Shore show.
Yes.
And
And
I did the Dinah. I did the Dinah.
Come in. I hope that was a bottle of water and not one of his body parts. It's just given out.
I did the Dinah Shore show.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, and I loved Dinah. She was great.
Yes, you
she was
did.
such a big desert person. I mean, you all must have known her down here.
And you would have done the Judy Garland show, but I got fired before I could get you.
No, you did 8 of them, and I was never on the Judy Garland.
I was barely on the Judy Garland show myself. But one thing about these women is RJ was gorgeous, right? And he was glamorous and he was exciting and I mean, he became what was known as a boy shtup. But anyway, but Judy Garland, I wanted to do the Judy Garland show. If you could make them laugh, it helped. I wanted to do the Judy Garland show, and I finally got hired for it, but I didn't want to meet her first. So finally, I go in to meet her in Mike Dan's office. There's this little woman who the image was huge, and I didn't know what to say. It was all of a sudden. So I said, I don't care what you may have heard about me. There's no truth to the rumor that I'm difficult. And she went, you're difficult? I said, see there, even you've heard it. But that went on to a wonderful, wonderful relationship until I let her sing Battle Hymn of the Republic, and the CBS executive says, that's not what we want. We want Dinah Shore. I said, well, you bought the wrong lady. So anyhow, I was escorted out right before I could book you. If I had it to do over again, I'd have unloaded her and put you up there. You lasted longer than she did. You've lasted longer than anybody.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I'm doing pretty good. You know?
Oh, you're doing great. Oh, I mean, well, okay, never mind.
I was so privileged to know these ladies, and what they did for me. You know, I mean, they were so marvelous, and it was, you know, working with these women has been a tremendous experience. And you know, I wanted to put that down. I do, you know, I do this show NCIS, and
Yeah, number one show on CBS.
and I work with a lot of young people there, and they're always asking me about the business. You know, what was it like? What was it? Because it's changed so much. And these women, who, I mean, these really gigantic stars, they had a tremendous commitment. They were, you know, like for instance, do you all remember Ann Sheridan? You know,
Oh boy.
you know, a woman, an actress like that, had the responsibility of being the star of a motion picture and a company and carrying a lot of men and crew and have to be there, know the lines, and you have to give up a lot for that. You know, it's difficult to be a lover, a wife, a mother, and all of that, and have a career. And these ladies that Scott and I wrote about did a tremendous, you know, they gave us all, so I've said that, they gave us all so much, and they were just so special, and I wanted to have the opportunity with Scott to put it down on paper, and it's our take on it, and
Well, they say in
They
the
were
book, you
special.
say in the book is a love letter to these ladies.
yes,
And
it
you had a
is.
very special relationship. You didn't expose anything. You didn't tell anything you shouldn't. I mean, it was a wonderful,
No.
wonderful, warm, meaningful book that I'm sure
Thank
all
you.
of the ladies would enjoy.
Thank you very much, George. I mean, you know, as I've said, you know, they were so special, and I just wanted to pay a tribute to them because, you know, I had the opportunity of being with them. I mean, I had the opportunity of working with Betty Davis, and she was so wonderful and such a marvelous actress, but she gave up a lot for all of that. You know, she had a difficult private life, and you know, hard to keep relationships going and have that kind of demand on your talent. But
But this went on and on and on. I mean, there was everybody from Rosalind Russell to Greer Garson to all of these women. And how did you do that? I mean, you were like in your 20s. You show up, hello, this is your leading man, and day after tomorrow we'll be shooting this love scene. Now, how did you deal with that? Because every one of the women in this book, as I recall, you had a moment of intimate relationships with them. How did you handle that, so to speak? You're my idol, RJ. I mean,
no, when you say an intimate relationship, what do you mean by that?
well, there you did love scenes with every one of these women, and there
Well,
must
I
be
know,
1,000 of them in
yeah,
here.
but when you're doing a love scene, George, come on.
Just talk a little slower. Go ahead.
When you're doing a love scene,
Go on.
I mean, it's been written, it's been rehearsed. The two actors are trying to make it as real as they possibly can.
Sure.
And you try to do the best you can and hope that it's edited right and it all happens. I don't have to tell you that.
It's a tough way to make a living, I'll tell you.
I know.
You poor guy. Oh,
As I said, I've been very blessed.
I think so, and a number of times, by the way. You've been blessed frequently. By the way, and then I've got to include this because you finally really hit the jackpot. I mean, you've had some very, very colorful women in your life, you know, Natalie and Stephanie, all of this. But he finally, Jill St. John. You all know Jill St. John?
She's here tonight.
That may have been your luckiest break of them all. Did I ever tell you about when I worked with Jill St. John? I can tell this.
No, yeah, tell it.
Well, we were doing a show. Most of the things I did were kind of a little edgy and eventually kind of got in a little bit of trouble. But we were doing a show with Steve Lawrence, and we needed some kind of beauty on the show because Steve is nothing to look at, you know. And he sang, great singer. But so anyhow, I decided Jill St. John was at the Plaza Hotel. So we go over to see her, and I said, I want you to do this. So she said, well, I'm not really a singer or a dancer. I said, you don't have to be. I said, can you recite this poem? And she said, what does that mean? I said, so we have this thing, we have it beautifully lit, and she's on a chaise in a slinky thing, and I had her recite this child's poem. This may have been one of the reasons I got fired.
You use a
You
microphone.
can imagine Jill on a chaise, right? Gorgeously lit, and this was skinned, and she's laying there. She recited this poem. Hey, playmate, come out and play with me, and bring your dolly 3, climb up my rain barrel, slide down my, and we'll be jolly friends forevermore. So sorry, playmate, I cannot play with you. Anyhow, so she read this thing in a very seductive, quiet, and the network went, what the hell is that? And I said, it's a child's poem. Well, ask your kids about this poem. She says, slide down my rain barrel. They went, what the hell? This was my relationship with Jill. I went on the air, and they loved it. People really loved it. And so since then, we've never worked together again after that, strangely enough. But she survived it, and so did I. I ought to get you that tape. It'll really blow your mind.
You don't have to get me the tape, George. She does it to me all the time.
I didn't sign in for this kind of conversation. You want to go back to she does? Go ahead, just once more time, because that really was it excited me. I'm going to put my poem away because you topped it. But the names that are in here. Oh, I'm sorry. It's better if you can't hear. Trust me. But of all, did you have a favorite leading lady other than Jill?
That's a hard question to answer.
It sure is.
Better be careful.
Yes,
Yeah.
you're right. I loved working with Audrey Hepburn.
Sure.
She was a very special lady. And
How did
what's that?
No, how did you like working with Betty Hutton?
I never worked with Betty Hutton.
Did she know that? You didn't work?
No, I never worked with
She
Betty
still
Hutton.
thinks she did.
Betty Hutton is in the book, and I met Betty Hutton, but I never worked with her.
Yeah. And you
you
didn't
ever
work
work
with
with her?
Garland either.
Did you ever work with her?
Yes.
With Betty Hutton?
Yes. I worked with her for a month one night. Well, I was doing the Judy Garland show, and Judy was a real piece of work. And when Judy was
Don't bring up the Judy Garland show again, will you?
I was doing this show, no. Anyway, she was doing Annie Get Your Gun and was fired. And she was dressed as an Indian, and she was replaced by Betty Hutton. And when they gave her notice, nobody would tell her before they all went away for the weekend. So here's Judy coming down the hallway dressed as an Indian, saying, you can't fire me, I'm an Indian. So anyhow, I met Betty Hutton. Who else is in there that you really, I mean, Bridget Bardot, Audrey, you know.
I never worked with Bridget Bardot.
You didn't?
No, she's in the book, but I
She
never
lied
worked.
to me then.
No, I never worked with her. I met her. Did you ever meet her?
Yeah. I think I met everybody. See, that's when I was working as an executive in charge of emergency departures. I was one of the emergency departures.
Oh,
We have had some laughs together, me and RJ. I mean, socially, professionally, with the Sinatra family. He was a piece of work, and he loved RJ. Just loved RJ. We had great laughs with Mr. Sinatra.
yes, we did. You are going to get to that.
No,
No, okay.
Mrs. Schlatter told me.
He was really fantastic. He was so wonderful to me and so generous. He took me with him over to Europe, and I spent so much time with him, and he was a very, very special man. He was the biggest star I think I've ever been around. I mean, He was really something.
He was an adventure, and again, if you could make him laugh, you could do anything. But you better be funny, and so I could make him laugh.
Yeah, you could make it.
And we had great fun. He had a companion named Jilly Rizzo, and Jilly Rizzo had one eye that went kind of like this, you know, and he was connected, and so Frank and Jilly would show up, and that was an adventure.
Oh, they were great. Yeah, that was very adventurous.
And Jilly knew all of the kind of gavones, and hey, what do you want, you know? And he could fix anything. But back to your leading ladies. They were a lot more attractive than Jilly Rizzo, I promise you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, George.
And so were you. You held up amazingly well for a man that has been through what you have been through, just with the auditions, let alone working. You must be exhausted.
No, I'm doing all right, George.
Oh, all right.
All right.
Jill, you're doing all right? I'd say you're doing really well. Well, so am I, by the way. And until tonight, Jolene and I this may be it tonight.
You think so?
She said, just talk to RJ, don't go out there and do a lot of jokes.
Uh-huh.
I said, if I didn't do any jokes, we'd still be living in the valley. You got to see Jolene and Jill standing together, boy. You call the Vice Squad. The two of them are gorgeous together.
What else are you going to ask me about?
Audrey Hepburn. Go on.
Audrey Hepburn. I spoke about Audrey Hepburn. I mean, she was one of the most marvelous women I've ever met. She was a very special lady. She reflected everything in her life that she was. I've known very few people like that, you know. I mean, everything. The flowers, her wardrobe, everything about her was just amazing. It reflected
I had
everything.
more fun with Audrey Meadows, but that's okay.
Audrey Meadows, yeah, I knew her too. She's not in the book though.
But she couldn't make it. She couldn't pass the physical.
She could pass the.
Very few could. Now, I don't think we're going to be invited back. I'll tell you the truth, RJ.
I think
Jolene said, just ask RJ who he did the movies with and who he worked in, because there's hundreds of hours of movies and God only knows how many hours of television, which is what Jolene told me to ask you about. And I haven't gotten to that yet.
I don't think we're going to have time to get to that.
Why, what's the clock on the old wall say? We still have time. I've been throwing...
Maybe some of these people would like to ask us a question or two. What do you think? Barbara Stanwyck? Who asked that? Where did that come from? David. Oh, David. Barbara Stanwyck. Yes, I did a film with Barbara. I was in a film with Barbara Stanwyck called Titanic. And I wrote about Barbara in my first book. Scott and I wrote about her. And she was a very special lady. I was 22 years old, and I fell madly in love with her, and she was absolutely great to me.
You were 22 years old?
Yeah. And
how old was she?
She was 44.
Okay.
And I can tell you that if you ever had your son or anyone like that have the opportunity of falling in love with an older woman, it's an adventure that is really marvelous. And she was great to me, really great to me. And I respected her so much, and she was a very, very wonderful, marvelous woman.
Well, and did you send her a love letter too?
Yes, I did.
Did you?
Many love letters I sent to her. She was a very special lady in my life.
Do you know who is the modern you? Is there anybody that rivals you? You were very busy from the time you were 18, working in the stable, to here you are now with Jill St. John. You're an amazing example of what you can do to a body and have it survive. See, I know stuff you don't know.
What can I tell you? Janet Leigh. Oh, she was so marvelous. Did you ask me about her? I did. Oh, she was so great. I did a film called Prince Valiant with her. I was the one in the dark wig, in the black wig. And but Janet, what'd you say?
Nice page boy.
Oh, nice page boy, yeah. You know, for years, Dean Martin thought I was Jane Wyman. You know, unbelievable.
He didn't really think.
Janet was a very, very wonderful lady, and she raised two beautiful daughters, and they're great. And I miss her very much. She was gave us all a lot. She's in the book.
Sure she is. She survived Tony Curtis.
Yeah.
That was you got stunt check for that.
Yes. Did you have a question? God, ask me something, please. Christ.
Well, what's the capital of North Dakota?
Were your parents in the movie industry? How did you, and what was the school you went to, and how did you segue into the movie industry?
Would you ask me that again?
It sounds like you grew up in Los Angeles.
I grew up what?
In Los Angeles?
Yes, I grew up in California, and
And were your parents in the movie?
no, my parents were not in the business, and I had a very big struggle with them to, particularly with my father, to continue and try to become an actor. And I was, you know, I had the fortune of being very close to a lot of young people that were my contemporaries, that their mothers and fathers were in the business. And I was just always attracted to it, and the one thing I wanted to do was to be an actor. I'll never forget when I got under contract at Fox, I was making $75 a week and taking home 55, and I was so excited. I mean, the business to be in the motion picture industry at that time was really terrific, because I caught the last part of it, you know, the last real contract system and the studio system, and it was a very exciting time for me, and I was lucky, you know. You got to have a lot of luck. And I was lucky.
You were also very good.
I beg your
Barbara Sinatra.
Hello.
Barbara Sinatra. Oh,
There's the lady
now
for you.
there's a friend of both of ours.
Oh boy.
And yes, she's special. I knew Barbara. I met her when she was a showgirl in Vegas. I knew her then. Terrific lady.
Very special lady.
Very, very terrific lady. And she's done so much for the Barbara Sinatra Children's Center and for the desert down here. She's just fabulous.
That was the first like child treatment center like that. And they now have similar establishments all over the country where children can go if they've been molested, and they treat the whole family. Barbara's a committed lady.
Yes,
And
very much.
for her to survive that, because you know, a week with Sinatra is like, you know, 2 years with anybody else, because he never went to bed. He did occasionally have a beverage too, as I recall.
And you know that they never turned anyone away from that. There's never been
Nobody
anyone
ever
turned
paid.
away from the Barbara Sinatra's Children's Center that's had a problem that went there.
Very special lady.
Boy, that's something to say.
They didn't even turn you away.
Yes?
I'm looking through here and seeing, is there anything that I can ask you about that won't get Jolene upset? No, I think that's pretty much it. What about Greer Garson?
Greer Garson, I met Greer Garson, I was a kid, I was taking care of, the Bel Air Hotel used to be a stables. And when the war broke out, all of the grooms went to work in the aircraft factories or went in the service. And so all of the young kids, there were a couple of us, John Derrick was one, and myself and a young man called Noel Clara, but the three of us took care of the horses at the Bel Air Hotel. And she lived right across the street. And she was married to a man called Richard Ney. And they used to go riding all the time. And I first met her then, and then I knew her, I got to know her a bit through Laurence Olivier. And she was she was an extraordinary woman. I mean, she was very gigantic star, George.
Oh, boy.
Gigantic star.
I talked her into doing Laugh-In once.
Really?
Yeah, it was in the early days when we created a group called the Farkle Family. And remember the Farkle Family? And so Greer Garson said, "What are their names?" I never named them. So she stood on stage. I've got a shot of Greer Garson standing on stage naming the Farkle family. There's Fred and Frida Farkle, and there's Simon and Gar Farkle. And she stood on stage and named the entire Farkle family. So, and those names stuck with them. Some of those people are working today under the name of Farkle. And NBC was very concerned about us using the word Farkle. They didn't know for sure what it meant, you know.
She had a tremendous sense of humor.
Oh, she was
A lot of
funny
people didn't
and
realize.
Body.
Oh,
See,
yeah.
some of these women had this image of being, you know, whatever, but they were bawdy. If you ever got in a discussion with Judy Garland, I mean, she could make a